You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Haha, this is the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. I am your host, Lester Blosser, joined by my co-host and good friend, the extremely talented Stephen White. Hello, how are you today, Stephen?
Exhausted, but I'm doing fine. I'm pushing through.
Well, I could say I'm exhausted, but I'm a little too excited to be exhausted because, for once on our humble little podcast, we actually have a guest star today.
We do.
You might know him from Wrong Turn from 2021. You might know him from Haunt. He had a role in a movie called Dark Waters. Terror Trips, which I was not familiar with, but we actually heard about that from another podcast that we did, which was really exciting, and that kind of led us to where we are now. And he's also working on a film called Watchdog with some Nightmare on Elm Street royalty. Everybody, we have a special guest today, Mr. Cheney Morrow. How are you doing today, Cheney?
Pretty good, Les. How you doing?
Oh, hanging in there best I can. That's all we can do these days.
Yeah. True.
So, before we get into, interrogating you, as I like to say, I wanted to just ask a pretty basic question. And it's a real simple question. Just tell us about you. Who is Cheney Morrow?
I'm just a simple Midwestern guy with a big imagination, I guess. It's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
No, man, just a pretty average, basic Midwestern fella. Wife and 3 kids. Been doing the theater thing since I was a little kid. I'd always had an interest in it, and little by little, make attempts over the year. Finally, I kind of broke through, and I've been lucky enough to continue working, which is, really thankful and grateful for that. 'Cause some of the best actors I know, don't work enough, frankly, and that's by no choice of their own, But no, man, that's about it. There's really not a whole lot of a whole lot more to me than that.
I will say one thing too. You are definitely a great villain. The movies that I've seen you in that I've just gone, wow. I mean, all of them I love your performances, but seeing you play a villain is just phenomenal. I have to tell you that. I've always heard that it's more fun to play the villain than the hero. So,
I think so. I think it is. I mean, they're both pretty challenging and present their own hurdles, but villains are always a little bit funner because these days, this day and age, people seem to really enjoy the bad guys.
True.
So,
Now, I was actually watching Terror Trips. I watched it today to give myself a refresher on it, and it's actually kind of funny. We had recorded an episode and we asked a question on Twitter about horror and having a significant other who doesn't love horror as much as you do, and the man that wrote and directed Terror Trips, he actually ended up responding to us, and it kind of led us. This just shows you how small of a world it is. It kind of led us to talking to him a little bit on Twitter about it, and I got to looking at the different people in the cast, and I saw your name, and I went, man, that sounds really familiar to me. Just don't know where I know it from. And your sister is married to one of my good friend's brother. And we had talked about that for a moment, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and just message him, find out if he might be interested in coming on. But I won't bore you with my whole backstory. This show is about getting to know you a little bit better. Steven, I see you sitting there. I know you've probably got some questions that you've probably written down and anything. I'll let you take the lead and maybe ask a question that we could go with.
Well, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I mean, being an actor, you said that you luckily broke through, unlike some other more talented people, as you say. What actually led you down that path? Was it always something that you were kind of passionate about, like from early childhood, or was it just something that kind of grew?
I was always passionate. I mean, I think the first if I can go back as far as like probably 5 or 6, and I told my parents even then, I was like, yeah, I want to be an actor. So I mean, it's been there the whole time, but I never really moved out of this area. Film wasn't up until these past couple years. Film wasn't as big around here as it has been.
Sure.
These past couple years. So, but it was always there. Definitely, it's just more slow going. I probably could have put my foot on the gas a little bit more early on. But with technology now, things it's a little bit easier to do things. Like it's not the way it used to be. You don't have to travel all the way to this state to do the audition.
Sure.
You know, or you don't have to go there to meet them in person. Now you can just do it, you know, kind of like we're doing it now. So it's made it a bit easier. I'm not sure I could have survived the 70s and 80s and 90s era of what it took. I'm not sure I could have survived that. So
I was gonna say you're from my neck of the woods. I believe you're from Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. Dayton, born in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah.
I'm a rock skip away from you. So right in between Columbus and Dayton, where the best thing we have is cornfields. So
Gotcha.
Now, one of my favorite roles of yours, I'm gonna, because I want to ask about this a little bit. One of my favorite roles of yours, and in all honesty, it's the first thing that I've actually ever seen you in. I was with your wife's husband's sister, and she was like, "Yeah, I have a family member in this," and I went, "Oh, really?" And that is Haunt. You are just chilling in that film, and I have to ask, what was that like? You know, being on the set, really, of any movie. You know, I have curiosities about, you know, really being on the set of any movie, but especially with that one. You know, what kind of atmosphere was there on the set? You know, did you joke with people before you did these scenes where you were traumatizing them, or did you kind of stay off away from people? Just out of curiosity.
When I got there, I was so kind of blown away with the scale of the whole production, how much, because I had done plenty of short films up to that point, but nothing of this scale, with all the trailers, the multiple locations, and the drivers and the catering and all that stuff. You know, I'm like, wow, I was pretty taken back. So I was excited to be there, and I don't think they like it was their goal to keep the bad guys and the good guys separate, but he did kind of fly the good guys in together, or as far as I know, like right around the same time, so that they had some time to spend with each other before they started filming and to develop their chemistry. And like, they all got along. If they wanted to keep us separate, I broke that rule big time. I was my trailer was right next to Will Britton, who was the lead good guy, so to speak. Me and him hit it off, man, and we sit around and talk a bunch of times. And I met the rest of them as the movie was filming. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when the time came, I would do my thing to kind of get me in the moment. But I mean, it is acting. I wasn't so wrapped up in the creepiness of it that I couldn't enjoy myself. You know, I couldn't. I'm just not that type of a performer.
Yeah, I've seen actors in the past who have a really hard time turning it off. So
And that I can understand. I mean, given you spend months and months filming something or working on something, it can be hard to break that mindset and move on to the next thing. That, yeah, I get. But I filmed for, maybe 2.5 weeks. So it didn't traumatize me because the overall vibe of the place, the set, was that something special was going on.
yeah,
Of course, nobody knew at the time, and all we knew was that the writer-directors of this movie currently were filming another film that they had written. It was being filmed simultaneously. It was called A Quiet Place.
Oh, yeah.
The buzz for this flick was so big that everyone on set's talking about it. Like, wow, man, these guys got this whole other thing going on with it's supposed to be really good. I don't know. I'm hearing great things. And of course, that movie just destroyed the box office when it came out. The first one, especially, was just huge. So to know that I was also working with these guys who are about to really kick, the horror industry right in the balls with with this flick, that was cool in and of itself. And I also, that when I had faith, I think at that point, I was like, well, this must be good then. Right? I'm like, this is gonna have to be good. These same guys wrote this. It's gonna have to be good. Sweet. And yes, no, luckily it did. I think it turned out really well. I was really, really happy with it. I owe a lot to that movie. So
I'm still waiting for a sequel. So
I'm still waiting for that call myself.
I mean, I remember watching it, and I'd heard a lot of reviews on it, and I went in and good horror is kind of hard to find these days, I think, in a lot of places. And like you said, the scale of this movie was a lot bigger than, necessarily maybe an indie film. And for the longest time, I mean, indie films have kind of been where it's at, I think anyways. And seeing something like this, I was like, I'm going to go in and have good, I'm going to have high hopes for this film. It looked promising. And after watching Han, I just went, okay, they still know what they're doing.
Yeah, that was a good movie, man. That's a special one.
So I got a question, kind of going back to your roots of doing short films. I've dabbled in a few short films myself years ago, and I'm curious to know how that experience was for you, collaborating with other people. Were these like short films that you were kind of heavily involved with, not just from an acting standpoint, but maybe producing it, directing it, or anything like that? Or were these just short films you just happened to find yourself in other people's projects and you just had to kind of find your footing within their vision?
I was, aside from the film Watchdog, I'd never produced anything. So I was just an actor in those short films, but it all stemmed from Wright State University has a big film program, but they also have a big theater program. And I did one show there. And then afterwards met a guy who said, hey, I'm doing a short film. Would you be interested in reading for it? And it was the lead about a homeless fella, early 20s homeless guy. So automatically I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that. But no, I went in and read for it, and I said that was the break into film, because I had always wanted to. But if not for that program, I may never saw myself on a film. And then that one there, the festival it played in with all these other short films, a director from another short film saw that one. And then we started talking, and he said, hey, I got this other film. Would you be interested in reading it? Again, it was the lead, but it was a much longer short film. Like originally, I think it was 45 minutes, but it got chopped down to probably 25, I think. Mm-hmm. And that was a really dark, weird little movie. A great experience, and I learned a lot with that one in particular. I wasn't as green as I was previously, and I was more comfortable in this one to take bigger risks, you know, take bigger chances.
Sure.
Because I knew at this point, I'm like, well, we can just do it again, right? Like theater, if it don't work, we'll do it again. Once you realize that, you're like, okay, cool. The possibilities are kind of endless, unless you're that strapped for cash, which
Right.
they probably were. They probably were. But that one played somewhere. I don't remember. But the film itself is what brought some attention to, and I was able to get an agent after that. And, you know, a couple years of failing in that, Haunt had come along, but it was through a casting agent in Cincinnati, and it was just them having got word that I was at this agency. And they asked a few people from there, you know, but I went, and man, and I guess that was that. Haunt really kicked it all into gear for me.
Right. Now with that opportunity, like you said, you're starting to produce now. Like you've got that one film, Watch Dogs, that you're producing. Are you looking to branch out into other avenues, or is this just the first time you've really thought about it?
It's the first time I really thought about it. Watchdog was it's written by and going to be directed by L.C. Holt, and I think a couple minutes into the script is when he realized he was kind of writing the lead character for me. So he kind of wrote geared into that while respecting this character, you know, on paper. And getting it made took, you know, more hands the merrier. So we all kind of hopped on, put our heads together to get the bad boy made. But it's it's difficult, man.
Yeah.
Being just an actor is so much easier. God. And I've done, you know, amongst all the producers, man, I've probably done the least amount of stuff. And I mean, it exhausts me thinking about it. And LC is, you know, the quarterback of this bad boy. And this guy's working, you know, like 15, 16 hours a day on this thing. So, I mean, I've got it easy. What I'm saying is, I'm like, damn, if it gets harder than this, look, I'm going to take my time. But ultimately, yes, I do. I am interested in, at some point, using the platform of film to get as much great stuff, great content noticed, because a lot of great stuff goes overlooked.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so I would love to help produce other stuff once I get it really figured out. I would like to direct something at one point. I've always wanted to write something. I have several things that I have written. None of them's finished because, you know, I hate myself when I start writing them.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, you know, it's something like that. But yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to do more than just act. But as of right now, like, I'm just now getting the acting thing. Just now getting comfortable with that. But step by step, you know.
Fair enough, yeah.
Now, this was something I was thinking about before we even went on today to record. I had seen on your credit list, you know, a lot of horror films, of course. I'd seen a drama, more of like a comedy movie. It seems like a majority of what you do is horror. Was that a happy accident, or does horror just kind of draw you in?
It was definitely a happy accident, because all the training, I had never received any training pertaining to film or even horror, especially horror film. They didn't teach that, you know, like, hey, horror acting 101. This is where you learn to scream, you know. This is what it feels like to be, you know, knifed to death. They didn't have any of that stuff. So I was very classically trained for drama and comedy and you know, a lot of Shakespeare. I mean, a lot of really nerdy theater stuff, man. I love it. I loved it there. But horror is, I think, what the reason I'm able to why yeah, on paper it looks like that's pretty much where I landed, you know, where I struck. Any training I got from that was purely from my love of just horror movies.
Mhm.
It was always my favorite genre growing up. I mean, my film collection in general is schizophrenic. I mean, it's weird.
Just
I've
another
got
reason to put you on my list of people I like.
silliest horror movie you'll ever see, right next to, Citizen Kane or like No Country. So I love all the really great stuff, but I always had just a love of horror. So
Yeah.
I tend to understand a horror script or a monster. I think understand that. My instincts with that I think are better than that of, like, say, a comedy or a really heavy drama. My instincts kind of kick over with the horror thing, just because I'm like, oh yeah, I love horror. I'm like a weirdo with the stuff. I'm like, I think of it as like, a Freddy, a Jason, man. I love this stuff. So anything I got from horror, if I landed there, which it seems like that's kind of what has happened, my love and appreciation for just horror is what got me there.
Yeah.
Hey, that's where all the best start, man. They all start in horror.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. I actually went through a list of them the other night. Like, I don't know why I was trying to prove my point to someone, but it's like 25 different people.
It's crazy the amount of actors and actresses that start in horror and then move on to other genres. A lot of people consider horror a stepping stone kind of genre, and I've never looked at it that way. One of my favorite actors personally, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger. He's horror royalty. And to me, that sounds like a pretty decent title. And this was a really random thought I had, and I wanted to ask you this too. Speaking of horror and franchises and characters, if you could be involved with any horror franchise, past or present, what do you think you would choose and why?
It's funny to ask, because for a while now I've been trying to campaign this exact thing. I believe I should be the next Freddy Krueger.
Dude, come on. This can't be a coincidence. Okay.
When Robert, yeah, I'm telling you, when Robert.
Oh my goodness.
Because he is getting older, and when he
Yep.
finally does, and he might yet make another one. I'd love him. I'd love if he did, but if he chooses not to, I think the way to go is, because I don't believe you're going to find an A-lister who's going to want to do it.
Yeah.
They're going to need to dig through to find a real guy. And I'm telling you, I'm the man. I should be the next Freddy Krueger.
Should I tell him,
I
Steven?
understand.
Yeah, go ahead, because you can't tell me this is a coincidence. This is this is uncanny.
So Cheney, I have to tell you something, and you'll get a kick out of this. When Steven and I first met, I went to high school with his wife. We met at my wedding, right? And he was looking at a script of mine. I am an avid Nightmare on Elm Street fan, and I was working on a script that would basically take Robert Englund's version of Freddy and show the transformation from his Freddy into a new Freddy. I always thought that the fans, because he's so iconic, the fans should actually see the transformation from the original Freddy to the new Freddy. And it's funny, it's even funnier now because you've worked with Mark Patton. I actually have him in my script so that his character Jesse could receive the redemption that he deserves. So that is hilarious that is your answer. That makes my day. Oh man, that is insane. Oh goodness.
You can't beat that. I mean, that's just,
Oh my goodness. I know who we need to talk to, Steven, if we do short films and stuff. We got an actor right here that might be able to help us out. Oh Lord. Steven, if you've got some more questions, I've got my list, but I want to kind of go in between us.
No. Well, let's see. What else I want to talk about? Let's talk about Happy Slashers. I noticed that's a project you were working on, an animated project, which it's got me kind of excited, but I noticed I can't find it anywhere. There's a lot of, Indiegogo and stuff like that. So I mean, what do you know about that? I know who you're playing in that, but
That's about all I really know, man.
oh wow,
I mean, there was some people, everybody that was in it, I think, everybody collectively agreed to do it. And then the guy set up an Indiegogo for it. I'm not sure. I don't think that did so well, but I think the issue he ran into was like a copyright thing.
oh,
And he hadn't, because my buddy Damien Maffei, he's the one that said, he's like, I don't know how I could really pull this off, man. Like Chucky's owned by X amount of people and all this. Like, I don't know how he could, how he's going to pull this off. It stopped there. I know it's still a project that the fella Ron Gaeta, I think that's his last name. I'm not sure. I know it's something he wants to do still, but I think he's just caught up in kind of the legal issue where he might have to make some adjustments. But I assume that's what's going on. But hell, your guess is as good as mine.
yeah. I was a little curious about that because these weren't parodied versions of these characters. They were the actual characters, and I was curious how he was getting away with that. So that explains a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, I was actually really curious about that too, because after I had seen it, I think you and I might have talked about it for a minute, but I remember seeing it and I was like, okay, I'm not sure how that one's going to work. That's a lot of legal tape to get through.
But it sounds intriguing.
What I read of it sounded kind of funny. It seemed like it could be a pretty funny little thing. I was ready to do it. So
Sure.
Now that entailed voice acting. Is voice acting something that you would say that you would be interested in doing as well as actually acting in front of a camera?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Are you proficient in various voices?
I'd like to think so. You know, I was a goofy kid,
Goofy.
and I got 3 goofy kids of my own, and it's a pretty goofy place, pretty goofy household. I'm
That's how you
bouncing
keep
in
them
and out of
entertained.
voices I didn't know I had sometimes.
Our
It's-
kids bring that out in us, I guess.
Mhm.
Do you ever sit there and just kind of practice one, especially one you're really wanting to do, and you just hear it in your head and you just go over and over and it's like, I'm getting there, and try to find it.
I'm actually working on one right now. Actually, it starts filming in. I'll start filming in like 2 weeks, but it's unlike any character I've ever played in terms of villain. It's going to be big. I'm real. I mean, there's nothing on IMDb about it yet, which makes me hesitant to speak too much
Sure,
about
no.
it.
Of course.
Because I mean, I was just kind of waiting for that, waiting for that to pop up so I can be like, bet that right there. But it's I'm doing a remake of a film that was made in 2014, and it's unlike anything I've done yet, or unlike any story I've been a part of. I will say it's the scariest damn thing I've ever read. I'm glad I didn't read it at night. Because it is legitimately, I shit you not, the scariest thing I've ever read. So I'm like, oh, okay, no pressure, no pressure there. So I'm in the process now of doing something, working on something with my voice, and it involves like the register of my voice. I'm trying to take it a few different ways. And I practiced earlier. I was having coffee, and I practiced on my 8-year-old. I got somewhat close to her face and say, hey, how, does this sound like me? You know, I do the thing. And she says, she's like, no, it doesn't, and your breath stinks.
That's an 8-year-old, honest as hell.
So speaking of like doing voices and getting into character, do you find it easy to snap into a character, or do you have a certain process that you follow to get into character?
Oh, I think everybody's got their ways of doing things that work for them. You know, mine isn't always the same for every character. But no, it does. I mean, it takes practice, primarily just an insane amount of focus, because it is, depending on it, it's really not that easy to just kind of hop in and out. Like spot on, spot on, spot on. Like it does take a lot of focus, a lot of practice. I mean, enough. You have to be but comfortable enough with the character to where you control it.
Yeah.
So, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I get where you're coming from. I was going to say, do you have another question, Steven?
Well, I mean, since he brought up remakes, I did want to ask about one thing I noticed on his IMDb. A sequel to The Mutilator? A random 80s slasher flick from way back when? Who the hell came up with this?
Oh man,
How did you get involved?
It's actually pretty wild, man. When I tell you the guy that did the first one, his name was Buddy Cooper. He wrote and directed it. Okay, and as far as I know, he did no other movies in between then and now.
Okay.
Well, Buddy, I guess, man, I don't know. He got a wild hair up his ass one day and said, you know what, I feel like making a sequel. So he wrote a sequel to his original movies, like 35, 40 years old almost. Yeah. And that's awesome. Like just one day, and he's a very accomplished man outside of film. Like he's he's a very accomplished man outside of film. I mean, he almost did not need film, least of all to pay any bills, because this guy's he's big. He's a big guy. The way I got involved was the guy that wrote and directed Terror Trips, Jeff Seaman. He was picked up as the AD, the assistant director of the movie, which is just as important as the director, really. And he put the word in to me, and I went through the process that they were asking, but they essentially Bud said, yeah, I hired this guy. So it was all about who I knew in this situation.
Nice.
And Jeff has gone on the record to say that, if he's making a movie, he wants me in it. He's a good buddy of mine, man. And,
good friend to have.
I'm sure he's gonna. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And because he just knows I'm 100%. Every minute on set, 100%.
Right.
Honestly, if it wasn't for Jeff tweeting us and me making the connection again, I don't know if we'd be doing this interview right now, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna mention it. I'm gonna mention it to Jeff.
And this was Jeff from Ohio, correct?
Yes, this was Jeff from Ohio. We had a whole running joke about Jeff from Ohio on one of our last podcasts, because he had tweeted back to like I said, to one of our tweets, and it was a funny little coincidence. It was one of those it's a small world things. It really was, which is just mind blowing, but just one of those funny little coincidences, which I gotta admit, I like I said, I watched Terror Trips today to give myself a refresher on it, and I actually really enjoy it.
Oh, thanks, man.
What was that like on that? I have to ask, because it sounds like you and Jeff are good buddies and everything. So what was that experience like?
We were set back originally like 3 or 4 months because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But Jeff and the co-producer Hannibal Farrell got all the awesome, they did all the legwork to make this work with the new COVID protocols and stuff, like all of that, all that craziness. And so they worked out a way where we'd all be group tested 3 or 4 times a week sometimes. And we actually successfully did this movie in the heart of COVID with not one case.
Which is impressive on its own.
Which, wow, like now I understand why Hannibal would yell in our fucking faces. Pull your mask up. Relax. But no, now I get it, man. Now I get it. All the good guys, for the most part, didn't stay in the B&B, but a lot of the good guys stayed in the same place, and we all became pretty quick friends. It was real easy to work together after that. It was a fantastic time, man. I had a great time doing it. I didn't want it to end.
Yeah, and honestly, watching the movie and seeing the way that you guys all interacted, it's weird with some movies. You can tell if a cast doesn't like each other with certain movies, and you can tell when a cast really enjoys each other's company, and you could just tell that all you guys were just having a great time while the film was going on, and I loved that. I think it made the relationships on screen all that more important because I could tell that off screen you guys were all just having a great time together. And I really think that makes a big, big difference to people.
Yeah, I don't know how much, like, where I had more fun, like on the set or just back at the B&B, just like, having a beer and cigarettes on the balcony, just talking with it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And we stayed, I mean, there were some of the bad guys staying there too. And that didn't affect the relationships in the movie there, So it was a terrific group of people. Jeff wrote a really fun script. It's very fond to me. Like I got a really special place for Terror Trips.
Yeah.
And I prefer its original title, but I'm just a turd like that, I guess. But the original title, I guess, didn't scream, scary movie. So the distributor, I think they made him change it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, change it, man. You're not going to let the title stand in the way of, mass distribution.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But originally it was called On Location.
I got you. Now, I have to mention this movie too because I'll admit this now. It took me longer than I had hoped to watch the 2021 version of Wrong Turn. You're in the movie a little ways into the movie, but the Talon like nails and the way that you just presented yourself in the film, I mean, this was a character as soon as I saw you on the screen and you started talking, I just went to myself, this guy's evil as hell. What was that like? And I have to ask, did you meet Matthew Modine? Did you get to meet him? How was he? I really want to know that too.
Yeah, no, man, he was great. He's one of the first people I met. Really sweet, pleasant guy. He was running, I think, for SAG president at the time, like in the middle of his campaign for that. I mean, we talked, and I think he had just maybe filmed some of Stranger Things. So we talked about that a little bit. He was a really sweet guy, man. I enjoyed my time with him.
I noticed.
I enjoyed everybody. I mean, I keep getting lucky, man. I have yet to really have any issues with people.
Yeah. I noticed in Wrong Turn, somebody says to him, "You must be a proud papa." And as soon as I had seen that, it made me think, I wonder if they threw that in as a joke because of Stranger Things, because he's a much better papa in Wrong Turn than he is in Stranger Things. That's for sure.
Better dad. Better pops for sure.
But yeah, I mean, seeing your performance in that, I mean, the ending of your character was brutal. I'll say that. And I always think it's interesting when really evil characters get a brutal end like that. But yeah, just even the time that you had on the screen there, I mean, the scenes that you were in, you definitely owned the show. There was just this shadow around your character, and I've noticed that, especially in Haunt. Like I will say that until I'm blue in the face. I love when you do the reveal of your face in it and everything, but just the way that the character of Ghost is, there's so much tense atmosphere around that character, and you did that, and to me, doing that with a mask on especially is extremely difficult. So I have to give you props. I have to give you props there. Now, I want to ask about this. I don't know how much information you might be able to give us, but I am really curious about Watchdog. Could you tell us a little about it?
Yeah. It's actually got I think maybe 14 more days left on its Indiegogo run. We've already met, I think the last I checked, we're like 110% of what we were asking for, but we can't close it until the thing is over with.
Mhm.
But it's a film written and directed by L.C. Holt. It's about a fella, your average Joe. He's almost mugged one night, and he's saved by a stranger. And to say thank you, he, asks the stranger, offers the stranger to come back for dinner, as a sign of thank you.
Mhm.
And essentially, he brings the wrong person back to his house, where he lives with his girlfriend. And shit really takes a wild trajectory at that part. Things get real at that point.
Yeah.
So, a chance meeting, then an act of kindness is a first class ticket to hell.
That's a great tagline, actually.
Yeah.
Now, that's set to release in 2023, I believe. I had read somewhere.
We're filming it. We'll be completing that filming at the end of September. So when we're set to film, we'll be filming in Alabama, Montgomery, outside of Montgomery, Alabama, I believe. And I believe the order, or the deal we have with distributors is, I do believe that once principal photography is wrapped, we'll see a product probably within the 6 to 7 months.
Mhm.
So that's most likely be out maybe early next year.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with it best I can. I know Mark Patton actually does post quite a bit about it up on his Instagram and everything, and I had seen a few things about it, and it looked really interesting, and I love the overall synopsis of the story so far.
And there's more, but that's the basic, that's the good gist, because where Mark plays a really key, important role also in there, which I'm really excited to work with him too.
He seems wonderful.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to perform with him, because I'm a Freddie fanatic myself, man. And part 2 has always been awesome. Has always been awesome, and I feel like it just never got the love that it deserved.
Yeah,
because part 2 is awesome.
Yeah, I think it gave us our scariest version of Freddy, I think, that we've ever gotten. And it's unfortunate that at the time that it came out, it was sort of shunned away by a lot of people. And I think that really affected Mark Patton's career. And he definitely did not deserve that. I know that much. He's a very talented guy, and I've met him at a few conventions. We go to Horror Hound here at my house. We go there all the time, and he's been at one or two of those, and we've met him, and he's always wonderful. Speaking of Horror Hound, is that something you could see yourself doing down the road, signing autographs and meeting fans?
Actually, set to do it back in 2020 when they canceled.
Really?
Yeah, I was set to be there, and then I couldn't do the following one. And honestly, I haven't been asked back since.
Go figure, right?
once some of these other flicks come, they probably will. It all just, I'm open to doing it. And if I do a convention, it's usually only so that I can meet someone that's there.
Yeah.
And I'd be in a position where I don't have to wait in a line for it.
I get that.
So I'm on the other side. That means I can kind of walk around wherever sorry guys, just cut to the front to meet Robert Englund.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious because one of the conventions that we went to, Robert Englund was there, and he had all his security guys walking around him, and he was going to booths, and there were a couple celebrities that he actually wanted to meet really badly, and it was so odd to see him get starstruck by people, but he was so starstruck that it was unreal. But you see it happen all the time. I've told Steven too that maybe down the road we could take the podcast to one of the conventions, because if you go to a convention and you get a booth, you get special privileges, and we could maybe meet a couple of celebrities that we've not met yet. So, but I also wanted to ask you, there's two more questions I can think of that I really want to ask you. Steven, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask before I ask mine?
Well, let me piggyback off of that, since he's talking about, working with Modine, and then you're talking about working with Mark Patton. Do you find yourself starstruck since you've got to meet these people? Like, you just don't know what to say? Because I know me, I fumble. I'm looking at him, and I'm just like, and like, I want to say stuff, but I don't know what to say, so I'm just like, the hell with it. I just came to meet you, and that's it. So do you
I tend to be, yeah, I'll clam up if it's a situation like where it's just me, like not on a set.
Yeah.
If I'm on a set, that helps relieve a little bit of stress, because I'm like, well, hell, I'm allowed to be here.
Right.
Like, I'm part of this. I'm allowed to be here. I was really nervous at first when I met Ruffalo, or I think I was more nervous about the idea of meeting him, because when I did meet him, he was the sweetest guy you'll ever meet. It was incredible. He made me feel 100% able, and then just the training kicks in, and you just want to be, because you already know how good they are. Like, between him and Anne Hathaway, I'm like, I already know how great you guys are. I better do something in this little bit here, or I'm nothing. But I was able to, and they were really, really nice, and they were fond of what I did. They both told me afterwards, of very, very sweet people. So to answer your question, yes, if depending on the situation, I get just as, I'm just as nervous, if not more so, than anybody.
Right. No, it's always a hassle. Like, I try to get into my mind when I go to these conventions, I'm gonna be fine. It's cool. They're normal people just like me. And then when I'm face to face with them, it just, everything disappears. I'm like, and I can't think of words, and I don't know. I think the one time that I felt like I was trying, I tried hard. I was meeting Gillian Anderson, because I was a big X-Files fan, and I couldn't even look her in the eye. I just kept looking at the table. I said, I just want to come over and meet you because I'm a big fan of the show. And no one else in the line. And I was like, why isn't anyone over here talking to this woman? Because do you not know who this is? But I couldn't look at her, because I was like, I can't. And that was the only way I could talk to her.
Yeah. No, I understand that, man, completely.
I remember the first time I met Robert Englund. That's exactly how it was. I just bet, and I didn't know what to say to the man. And then the first convention I went to, I have to tell you this story just real quick. Everybody knows Marty from Poltergeist. Peels his face off. They say Marty's not coming back. So the actor's name is Martin Casella. He doesn't really do much in Hollywood anymore. He writes for Broadway now, and he's been doing that for several years. One of the first conventions I went to, I actually started talking with him, and that entire weekend, I'd get up in the morning, go over, I'd sit at his booth with him. We'd discuss ideas. He even told me at one point that if I ever was in New York and wanted to see a Broadway show, or ever wanted to get some pointers on writing, to look him up. And that changed the entire experience, because you meet people that are very approachable at some of these conventions. And it really puts things into a perspective. Like, yes, these are people that we know. We, Steven and I posted up about the podcast a little while back, and Steven watches The Last Drive-In a little more than I do, but we both are big Joe Bob Briggs fans, and we both love Darcy. And we actually we posted a story, and Darcy reposted our story in her story, and we were like, okay, that's super awesome. And then I remember Steven messaging me and going, something unexpected happened. And I was like, what happened? And Joe Bob Briggs had also reposted our story. And to us, that was like just a mind exploding moment. You know,
Hell yeah.
these guys take the time to, you know, make people feel good, and they bring the people together. And that's why I'm also really glad that you came on to the show. You know, we set out to do this show to make horror fans kind of feel like this is a safe space. We want people to feel like they're sitting at a bar with us, just chit chatting and having a good time. No judging. You know, if you like some cheesy 80s horror movie where a bunch of space zombie Nazis are fighting dinosaurs, that's cool. That's what you like. I don't know if that exists. If it doesn't, it's trademarked right now.
Yeah. I was like, you better get it before I do.
Right? But no, you know, like I said, we want it to feel like a community, and that's one thing that, and I'll mention her. Megan is your wife's, your sister's husband's
sister.
You know what I mean? Yeah. All this confusion. You know, Megan always, when we talked about you, she was like, he's super approachable, he's super nice guy, he's super relaxed. Like, I don't think he'd have any problem recording with you guys. And that's what we're looking for, you know, to just be able to sit and talk with people. Because at the end of the day, we all like horror movies. We all like things that go bump in the night. We all like being afraid together for a little while. So, you know, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time to do it. And I know we've been on for a little while. I'll try not to ask too many more crazy questions, but I do have something kind of futuristic to ask you. And that is, where does Cheney Morrow want to be 10 years from now?
Hopefully I would have 10 years from now, that means, see, one kid is out of the house. All right.
Yes.
Like where this is headed.
We're getting there.
Well, professionally, I would say in 10 years, I hope I would just have amassed, you know, a resume that I can be proud of. I hope the level of respect I've had, or I have among my peers, is, you know, extended more so. I hope it reaches, you know, a lot of other people. And I hope to have had directed my a full-length feature by that time.
Great goals. I like where you're going with that. And hey, one kid out of the house. I guess I could have asked a little bit further out, gotten the rest of them out of the house for you.
Hey, a decade from now, I'll be kid-free. I'm all for it.
So where do you see yourself in 20 years? Heaven, baby.
I still got a ways to go. I went ahead and had another one.
Oh yeah, man. My youngest is 1, so I've got a ways.
My youngest is 7 months, and we're almost 8 months, and we're planning on having another one. So.
Oh man, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently.
Hey,
Now,
you got it.
Just a part of it.
now, speaking of looking forward, you know, that's where you want to be 10 years from now, where you'd like to be. What would you like to see? And I won't give a time frame on this. I kind of like asking this just to see where people's mindset sort of is. Where would you like to see the horror genre go? Would you like to kind of stay how it is? Would you like to see maybe certain styles of horror films come back? Anything of that nature?
I would like horror. If I could ask anything, I hope that within 10 years they realize, like the Hollywood horror aspect, I hope they realize that within 10 years that ripping or taking what's popular, let's say in Korea or Spain, and immediately stealing it and remaking it, that's not the way to do things. That's not interesting.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing that. Let's stop. Well, that's a big one there for me. And let's stop just, you know, the remakes.
Yes.
Stop with all the remakes.
Yep.
There's plenty of original ideas. And the thing about the horror genre is it's the most produced genre in the business. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm telling you, it is. It's got to be.
Yeah.
You can look up a big list of dramas, a big list of comedies, big list of horrors. The horror list is going to be 3 times longer.
Yes.
Okay, that's what people, more independent filmmakers make horror films than any other genre.
And I think the independent films need to be focused on a little bit more by certain people, because there are so many great independent films.
Give one of those films the budget you would give, the same year remake of REC or The Grudge. All these movies that we just straight up said, "Ooh, that worked there. Bring it over here." Like then it just tarnishes the original idea.
Yeah.
And I'm with you there too on the remake aspect of things. I think remakes are okay in some sensibility with certain films, but there are films that I think they could do, as Steven and I call it, requels. You could sort of revamp the franchise, create a sequel, build upon the foundation that was already established. Because if the foundation is that good already, why tear it down? Why try to rebuild? And I'd seen a quote somewhere, or it was a saying somewhere, and I've said this on another episode before, but somebody put it perfectly. They said, why keep making remakes of movies that did really well when you could take a movie that maybe didn't do so well when it first came out because it didn't have the budget at the time, and remake it with a budget today and see what happens? You could find a million great ideas. But I
That being
definitely...
said, the movie that I'm working on now is not. It's the same writer director. He's essentially just like it's, I guess, essentially a remake, more like a reboot.
Mhm.
But it's definitely different because it's the same. It's one original idea. It's the same guy, and so the one I'm doing now doesn't apply, especially because it's going to kick so much ass. I can't wait till I can openly talk about it. This is gonna be a big one, man. This is gonna be a good one.
But at least that makes sense. I mean, like you said, it's still the same guy. He just now has the resources in which to do it. So that makes sense.
Yes, that's exactly the case. So okay, let's do it right.
Yeah.
And
boy, oh boy, it's gnarly. This guy's done it right.
Yeah, I'm
He's
excited
definitely
now. I want to know what this is, but I'm not.
I know.
Once there's some news comes out about it, I'll shoot you a text and be like,
All right.
I just see it now. We're gonna find out what it is, and we're both gonna be like, aha! I had a feeling. It's. I will say this. Speaking of having better technology and everything, I just thought about this. One of the newer Chucky movies that had come out, they had done computer animation to show Chucky walking around.
Mm-hmm.
When in the original movie, it was just, it was just a short person walking around in the Chucky outfit, and you could tell the difference. It was a small thing that they changed in the Chucky film, in the newer one, but it looked better. It looked more convincing. Little changes like that, I think, are important. Now, that just made me think of another question for you real quick, Cheney. Is it okay if I call you Cheney, by the way? I hope that's okay. How do you feel about practical effects versus CGI? Because Steven and I are kind of... Both of them are good together. We've talked about this, I believe, on one of our other episodes, Steven.
Because we feel like they should complement one another, not replace either or. I mean, granted, I would go for practical over digital, but I understand sometimes practical doesn't necessarily feel realistic. And that's where the digital can come in and kind of give it a little polish, but not too much. But sometimes they overdo it, and then they just like, well, let's just use all digital, and it'll work. It's fine. It's easier that way. And then it looks like crap.
Yeah.
I agree exactly with what you just said, man. Like, practical effects are badass, but in some situations, CGI is not only cheaper, but can you imagine, let's say, like the Kraken in Clash of the Titans, if they built that damn thing, like, you know how expensive it would have been to build a monster that huge just to be like, we built this Kraken, only $25 million, So, I mean, obviously, some CGI has its benefits for little things like that. They should complement each other. There's a place for
Mhm.
both. But if it's overdone, it just, it doesn't feel as good as if it's mixed so well in there that they feel the same.
See, I watched. I don't even think I mentioned this to you, Lester, but I actually watched this the other night, and it was an odd choice to commit to a digital character in a movie, knowing that it's primary to it. But there was a movie I found on Shudder called The Pool. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but but it's about a man who gets stuck in a deep pool, like it gets drained, and now he's stuck and he's down there with a crocodile. And the crocodile is all CG. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not the greatest either. You know what I mean? So it's like this kind of, it's passable. I'm not going to say it's atrocious, like you can't watch it, but it's not at the top quality tier either. And it just seemed a little odd that they committed the entire movie. They said, no, we're going to go all digital with this crocodile. That's it. And not even attempt to do some practical or maybe even some, maybe some animal wrangling work. I know maybe might not be safe in that situation, but I digress. Just curious, why you would kind of commit to that with such a large idea where it's essentially a primary character and you don't have the budget for it. So I guess that's a situation where sometimes the story can kind of overshadow the effects, but it's still a little distracting at times.
Yeah.
Well, and as one Freddy fan to another, I'm sure you saw the 2010 remake.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just bring up some really bad CGI and talk about Freddy coming out of the wall. The original movie, it was just a piece of stretchy material. He did the lighting just right, and he just pushed his face through. The new one, the remake, he pushes out sideways from the wall. The claw comes out, and it's bad. It's awful.
Yeah, it didn't. It did not look. That did not look good.
No, and a perfect example of practical effects with a little bit of CGI, and a very recent one. Let's talk about Stranger Things. Let's talk about Vecna from Stranger Things.
I haven't seen the newest.
I won't
spoil. Actually,
I won't spoil anything for you, but Vecna is like 98% practical effects. There's only a few things on him that are actually CGI. And when I found that out after watching the series, it was just mind-blowing because they took the extra time to do it. And, I think that is a wonderful thing. Hollywood kind of got away from practical effects for a while there. I mean, there was a point where they were even talking about doing CGI blood instead of using...
And they do.
Yeah. But I mean, they were talking about completely 100%, no more blood. And I'm sorry, but if it doesn't splash on an actor's face and they don't give that flinch, it's not real to me.
It's ineffective.
Yeah, I think you have to come back to those practical effects. It's one of those things where it's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of things.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Now,
Lester, before you go on, since you brought up Vecna, I just want to give you a tease. You're going to like my next video, by the way.
Oh,
I'll leave it at that because you brought up its two main components, Vecna and Freddy. So just leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there. Move on.
Sorry to. I have to tell you, Cheney. I know we've been asking you a lot of questions, but I have to tell you, as you've probably already kind of picked up on, Steven and I are both avid creative guys. We like to create things. We like to write. Steven actually freelances for the Joe Blow website, and he makes videos. He edits. He has a whole other podcast that he does. He has an entire website that this show's on, and also all of his shows. I always say this when it comes to the writing. Steven is definitely more elegant than I am, and Here's a question, because it's something that Steven and I are working on. What would you say to someone who wanted to break into the indie film world? What kind of advice would you give that person? Because we've been working on a short film. We're working on a script for a short film, and we're just gonna kind of get out there and try to put it out at some film festivals, see if it garners any kind of attention, and if it does, maybe try to make a full length film. But what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's eager to maybe jump into that world?
I would, well, it would start with, well, I guess it all comes down to, money. Ultimately, not like what you're, just how much it would cost to do it. The best equipment is necessary. And I'm not like a cameraman. Maybe some more tricks are known, but I know what you pay. Like generally, what you pay for is what you get in terms of quality and stuff. After that, it's all about just making sure you have people, on board. Everyone's on the same page. The locations, some locations might give you trouble, like others might require permits, others might not. But ultimately, to break in, all you really have to do is want to. If you have the project to do it, that should be enough to really get the ball rolling. As far as I know.
Yeah, it's always been a frustrating element for me because I've put a lot of time and effort into it, and I guess my luck has just never been there. But I continue on. I strive, because I have that passion, and I'm not going to let anything tear that down. I've even learned lessons over time. There was a series that I worked on with a buddy of mine, and at first it was kind of a collaborative effort to where I was like, well, your opinion's just as good as mine, and you can have a say in this, you can have a say in that, but he wasn't as committed as I was. He wasn't committed to everything behind the camera. He was committed in front, and that's it. And I didn't realize that. And I felt like the first season we did suffered because of that, but then when second season came around, I took charge. I said, this is my show, and that's that. If you got a problem with it, you're going to take it up with me, and that's it. And to me, it's the superior season because I put my best foot forward and took charge, as opposed to assuming everyone around me wanted to be a part of it too. And it makes a difference when you allow your passion to really speak to it. But I guess the right people just haven't seen those passion projects yet. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
Time is the best.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really have anything else to add right at the moment. What about you, Steven?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Cheney, do you have anything you'd like to say to anybody listening out there, maybe? Just figured I'd ask.
Well, guys, could take a look at the Indiegogo for Watchdog. There's still a lot of perks left, I believe, including the Mark Patton bundle, which I believe comes with a vinyl edition signed copy of Scream Queen, the album.
Oh, nice.
Which is an awesome documentary. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen that.
Yes.
That's excellent.
Yes.
Some Nightmare memorabilia. I believe his costume is actually up for dibs. His bloody wardrobe. I guess we give something away.
Oh, wow.
We call his wardrobe bloody. But there's still a Mark Patton bundle. I believe there's an executive producer, but there's a bunch of cool stuff up there. Any horror fans want to check it out. Movers Ultimate will premiere on Amazon next month on the 19th.
Nice.
August 19th. Beware of a film called Time's Up, which should be released by the end of the year, as well as a film called Late Checkout.
I had seen that.
But until then, no, thanks for watching, guys, and thanks a lot, Les and Steven, for having me on here.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
of course. We'll go ahead and we can put some links to like your IMDb, your Instagram, if you have a Twitter and whatnot. We can always put the links for those in our show notes. We can do
Cool.
the
Appreciate that.
Indiegogo and all that. We can definitely spread the word.
Man, I appreciate it.
Other than that, I guess Steven, you know you're better at closing out the show than I am. If you want to give the final information,
That's
we can
right. That's
close
right,
that out.
everybody. I know everybody had a hard time last week listening to Les try to go through it, but he was working off my notes, man. You know, I mean, you got to sit there and you got to read what somebody's writing for themselves, and he's trying to read it and try to put the same energy into it. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
I'm not good at this.
He's learning. He's learning. I've been 6 years at this shit. So, hey, everybody, all the audience out there, let us know how you felt about Cheney Mario. Wasn't he a cool guest? You know, just hit us up on Twitter and say, hey, dude, do you have a Twitter account, by the way?
I do.
Okay, so we're going to put
At
all
Morrow
that.
Cheney.
There you go. At Morrow Cheney. We're going to put all the links down below. Indiegogo, Twitter. The whole shebang is down below. So if you want to follow him, you want to support his works, it's all down below. Remember, check the show notes. Click on those links. But if you've got more to say and the tweet just won't do it, you can send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com and just let us know how awesome he was. I'll forward the email to Cheney because I got his email. And then I can just let him know. Do you love social media groups? You can follow us on Facebook. You can join our Facebook group. You can hang out with fellow horror fans like yourselves. You can also find us on Instagram. You can see an assortment of horror images if you so prefer. If you want to say nice things about the show, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us one of those beautiful 5-star reviews. You can express your feelings and help the show grow at the same time. And you can also do the very same thing on Spotify if you're so inclined, because they have rankings on Spotify too. I don't know where they're at, but they're there. You've got to listen to the shit though. So just be aware of that. You've got to sit through at least one episode. I'm sorry. It's all appreciated nonetheless. But most importantly, tell your fellow horror fiends to search for Horror Ramblings on the preferred podcasting platform. If we're not there yet, we are working on it. And if nothing else, keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience.
And remember to stay spooky out there, guys.
This has been the Horror Ramblings Podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.